The year is 2006, and Nintendo launches their fancy new Wii system. With this next entry in their hardware lineup was the introduction and subsequent normalization of motion controls in video games. Naturally, the launch titles for any system are created to showcase what these new pieces of technology are capable of, and the Wii was no exception, with one of these early Wii games being Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. But let's rewind a little further back. The classic GameCube franchise that found its humble beginnings in Japanese arcades was created by Toshihiro Nagoshi, best known these days as the man behind the Yakuza series, and published by SEGA. The premise is ridiculously simple, but it worked. Tilt the world to roll the monkey to the goal, with its ingenious level design focused on momentum, precision, addictive gameplay loop, and high skill ceiling. Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2 are still remembered very fondly to this day. After those first few games, however, the series suffered a bit of an identity crisis. We got cool and interesting ideas with Junior, Adventure, Deluxe, and Touch and Roll, each with varying degrees of success, or lack thereof. None of them managed to capture that same magic that made those first couple of console games great, resulting in Banana Blitz. This was meant to be a series refresh, aiming for the Wii's growing casual demographic at the time. A smart move to be sure, but fans were quick to pick this game apart in particular because it was simplifying the formula, something that later games would eventually double down on as they too were tech demos for upcoming Nintendo hardware. Though after 2012, excluding a shameless Peggle knockoff, Monkey Ball had gone radio silent. Fast forward to 2019, and gaming's remake remaster renaissance was in full swing. SEGA must have seen the hype around Crash N. Sane and Resident Evil 2 remake, as they decided it was finally time to bring their arcade classic back with a remaster to test the waters. And that remaster was Banana Blitz HD. Haha, yikes. So this was a questionable choice, to bring back a dead game series with the game that was the first of many nails in the coffin, the game in the franchise with the most lukewarm reception. It's quite the monkey's paw moment, am I right? Fans were quick to call SEGA out for holding II and his friends hostage. After all, if this game didn't sell, they could just slap Monkey Ball back in the vault, ditch the series then and there. Lots of fans didn't buy this game because they loved Banana Blitz, they bought it out of fear that SEGA would kill the series. But could it be possible that the fans were overreacting? Is this game at the very least a decent attempt to introduce the franchise to a new audience? Let's find out as we dive into Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD. Not to be confused with Ticket Blitz, not to be confused with Banana Splits, not to be confused with Banana Mania, not to be confused with Banana Rumble, not to be confused with Banana Blitz. I'm sorry, these names suck. Super Monkey Ball!
Bitch can't even swim.
Immediately, we can see this game's UI is much cleaner and easier to navigate than before. Say it's lacking in charm all you want, but I'd rather have this kind of menu over one that requires unnecessary motion controls any day of the week. They just got really annoying, to be honest. And also, bonus points for the banana-themed colour scheme. Yay. So our story is that these golden bananas get stolen by this guy, Captain Krabuchin, who, according to the game's description on PlayStation, is a space alien pirate king? It's our job to get these bananas back to feast on their 24k goodness. That's K for potassium. That's all there is to it, as this is the only major cutscene, not counting the ending. It's fine, I suppose, though it does lack that same quirkiness that made Super Monkey Ball 2's cutscenes a joy to watch, as cheesy as they were. However, as the HD implies, this is a remaster, so I'm not expecting any major changes to the story. What matters here is the gameplay and how it compares to the Wii version. World 1, Jungle Island, lets us get accustomed to the new controls at play here. As we are playing with a standard controller this time around, we're no longer forced into using motion controls. It's back to the good old analog stick, and I couldn't be happier about this. I approve. Now, using the Wii Remote was fun. That is until your wrist starts to ache from tilting the world up, down and all around after a short while. Banana Blitz is also infamous for adding jumping into the mix, something used consistently throughout the game, and while I don't feel as strongly about it like a lot of fans do, I can't help but feel as though it's just a little bit out of place. The game expects you to use it as a traversal tool, and it fulfills that purpose well, primarily for jumping up ledges or over hurdles, though you can use it for subtle course correction or finding the rare shortcut. The issue that I can see is that the jump makes the game feel closer to your traditional platformer when Monkey Ball as a series is far more than that, requiring the players and the developers to come up with creative alternatives to jumping, like the use of launchers or subtle divots in the stage layout. Which means it's time to discuss the elephant in the room. The level design. It's just okay. If you're playing it on the Wii, then it's fine, but if you're playing HD... well... Yes, analog control is far more comfortable when it comes to Super Monkey Ball. Precision is key after all. But for Banana Blitz HD, it's a double-edged sword. The levels of BBHD are far more linear in their approach, as they were initially designed around the two things I just mentioned. Jumping, and more importantly, the Wii's motion controls. The result is drastically simplified stage layouts, typically consisting of flat and or narrow pathways, slides, and the odd-moving platform. What I will say about the level design is that you can't deny that there are a few traces of the classic GameCube formula still visible in stages that focus mainly on verticality and, of course, momentum, a handful of which I actually enjoyed playing. Now, the remaster gives us full control. We're not bound by Wiimotes and shaky hand movements anymore, which sounds good on paper, but this has a knock-on effect impacting how players approach the game. These levels were not designed with traditional analog in mind, resulting in Banana Blitz HD being a much easier game than intended, for the most part. Most pathways are wider than they were before, giving the player a little too much breathing room to the point where precision is no longer necessary. Going for those optional banana bunches isn't just doable now, it's laughably easy. I wouldn't say the sense of risk versus reward has been completely eliminated, but it's certainly been softened. I do want to give credit where it's due, as some of the levels were altered slightly to cater towards this different control method. Levels that originally had these movement-restrictive railings now contain slim passages. This is a good change, as these portions of the game now rely on the player's balancing skills. Yet, what they don't seem to have changed much of, if at all, are the guardrails, the dictionary definition of redundant. They really don't need to be here, since we now have sufficient control to avoid falling off ledges, making the game feel overly forgiving. This wouldn't be so bad if they stayed in World 1, maybe used a little bit in World 2, and then sparingly afterwards, but that's not the case. They are a constant. They are used as latent to the game as World 8. Of 10. You'd think it'd be time to remove the training wheels by then, right? In fairness, not every stage uses them, and I also much prefer those levels, simply because it didn't feel like my hand was being held. Except for one, and we'll get to that travesty later. And there are so many stages that blend in together as the game is too insistent on recycling the same ideas, far more than its predecessors. Did we really need two similar slide levels in World 3? Let's not forget, except you might as well, but there are quite a few stages in the mid-game, most notably World 4 and 5, where all you're doing is just going straight forward. And you wait. Then you move again. And you wait. It's mind-numbingly boring beyond words. Stages also lack unique names, very sad, I know. Every classic Monkey Ball level had a name, a trivial detail, sure, but it made damn near every stage feel identifiable. If you enjoy these games, I could say simple things like Inchworms, Eaten Floor, Mobius, Exam C, Entangled Path, Jump Machine, Helix, Curvature, and many more, and you can easily visualize each level. Hell, the phrase Stamina Master alone is probably enough to make you shit bricks. Now compare that to Jumble Jungle 6, Detritus Desert 7, Cobalt Caverns 3, Space Case 4. It tells me nothing outside of the theming, leaving no lasting impression after you beat it. Again, a trivial detail, but it goes a long way. There are a handful of stage gimmicks to add challenge. Firstly, enemies. They're just moving bumpers that sometimes jump off the stage before you even reach them, so hardly a challenge. The other is boost pads. I hate these things. They do what you'd expect, boost you forward, but often to your detriment, sending you careening off the stage at good heavens miles per hour. The speedometer really says that. To make matters worse are the levels designed around you making it to the goal within a strict time limit on very narrow pathways laced with the bloody things. First we had too many guardrails, now we don't have enough. At times it doesn't even feel like this game was playtested with every character in mind, because to make up for the level design being heavily compromised, the roster was bumped up from 4 to 6, with the introduction of newcomers Yan Yan and Doctor. They're adorable, aren't they? They think they're part of the team. And they'd be right. More importantly, each character also has their own set of stats. You know what? I don't mind the idea if it adds something positive to the gameplay, and it does. To an extent. For instance, Ai is the lead monkey and functions as the all-rounder of the team. Mimi is the speed-focused one. Doctor is similar to Mimi, but he doesn't feel good to play due to his very disproportionate stats, making him feel very clunky. Baby and Yan Yan, much like real children, are very small, light, and of course, throwable, which sometimes leads to this. They make my issues with the boost pads 10 times worse. Lastly, Gongon is the biggest and the heaviest. He's least susceptible to getting thrown about and can break bumpers at the cost of being the slowest character in the game, meaning you'll reach the goal ring within the next 4 to 7 fucking business days. It's a neat idea that can make a lot of these stages slightly more replayable, as some characters are naturally going to excel in some areas where others may fumble. From making these crazy distances to squeezing through these narrow gaps, or even making navigating past some sets of bumpers seem so trivial. One advantage Banana Blitz HD has over its Wii counterpart is that you can actually see each character's stat before picking a stage now, whereas beforehand it was purely just a fuck around and find out endeavour on your first go before you found a monkey you were comfortable playing as. It's a nice little quality of life improvement that can really help a newcomer or returning players who may need a reminder on how everyone works. Structurally, this game is very similar to Monkey Ball 2's Story Mode, where you play 10 levels in a world before moving on to the next. I'm glad they kept this flow because it lets you get used to one world's theme and in the case of the remaster, gawk at the new crisp HD visuals. Having been a Wii game prior, Banana Blitz looked fine, but wouldn't look as good as this unless you were using some sort of upscaler or running it on an emulator. And I'm glad to report that Banana Blitz HD looks very visually appealing. Sure, the art style may not be to everyone's tastes, especially the almighty Monkey Ball purists. At times the saturated colours and patterns are obnoxious and gaudy, but it's entirely subjective. I do like both art styles, so I personally don't mind this cutesy take, even if it does make some textures look and feel a little more plasticky, inauthentic, or outright garish at times. It's hardly a deal breaker in my eyes. New to the remaster, I believe, are medals, 2 kinds, one for completing the world normally, and the other for completing a world without using a continue. It is nice that they retained the live system, however continues are unlimited, so you can continue on your merry way like nothing happened. Losing all your lives literally doesn't matter unless you desperately want to unlock alternate Halloween costumes. While purely a cosmetic change, it's still a reward for those seeking an additional challenge. Banana Blitz also introduced something unheard of for a Monkey Ball game before: boss fights. With an always locked on camera that doesn't fuck with you in the slightest, no, not at all. Each boss functions identically with their weak spot being pointed out just before you face off with them. I feel like I should censor that. I found these to be the worst part of the game, and it's not even close. You sit there and wait for their attack cycles to finish before they become vulnerable, dragging the pacing down to a crawl on top of being not very well designed. As I mentioned, the camera is always locked onto the enemy, so getting your bearings is a constant struggle. Doubly so if the boss is highly mobile, like the ones from Worlds 2 and 7. Sense of direction who now? Granted, it'd be much worse if we were using motion controls, having to reorient ourselves every other second, though it doesn't alter the fact that you can get flung off the stage from just their wind-up animations, which I swear in some cases I was miles away from, sending poor Mimi flying at terminal velocity. Or maybe I am delusional and it is a skill issue, you be the judge, but the only way I can describe it is frustrating. The only boss I could possibly look past is maybe the World 4 boss, because it plays the most like a normal stage. You're making your way from this robotic dinosaur's tail all the way to the big button on its head. This captures the feel and charm of classic Monkey Ball perfectly, as it's the only boss that focuses on navigating your way from point A to B and has a design that'd fit right at home in the GameCube era. I'm just sad to say that this is the only boss fight faithful to that concept. Another disappointing thing about the remaster is that the soundtrack is now inferior to the Wii version as well. The original soundtrack was actually a series of remixes from Touch and Roll, however, SEGA didn't own those tracks and couldn't get them back for HD due to licensing issues. What we instead got was a compilation of tracks from older games, a few new songs, and the very rare returning track from the Wii game. I'll admit that I do like a handful of these new songs. The game has a decent vocal theme that decks you in the face upon startup, and I especially adore the new catchy upbeat track used for World 1. Now it could just be that I have something to associate them with, but the returning tracks do not fit the game in the slightest. The music for World 5, taken from 3D, just doesn't belong in a Monkey Ball game due to how laid back, how generic it sounds. World 7 uses the extra stage theme of Monkey Ball 1 and the Clock Tower Factory from World 8 of Monkey Ball 2 as the boss track. It's like the audio equivalent of crossbreeding, confusing and oh so wrong. I love these older songs, I really do. It's just that they remind me I could be playing a much better game right now. World 2 uses the beginner shot music, which kinda fits, and the one surviving Wii track I noticed was Smooth Sherbet, the one a lot of people seem to like, so at least there's those. So we beat the last boss, get the golden bananas back, and we sail off into the cold, dark, empty abyss that is outer space. We're not done just yet, however. Not only do we unlock World 9, but also Sonic the Hedgehog as a playable character. He changes the bananas into rings and is arguably the best character stat-wise. He's fast, his jump is decent, and is all around great fun to use. I'm pretty sure his inclusion was advertised by SEGA though, which did take the surprise out of it, probably to try and help the game sell through brand recognition.
Hey, I know that rodent. I should buy that.
Upon completing World 9, we gain access to World 10, and I have to say these are some fun, well-designed stages. Having a traditional control method makes these stages far more enjoyable than they were on the Wii. They feel more skill-driven, not you, shortcuts are present in a handful, and are super gratifying to execute. 10.5 is still very much that one morbid joke you don't share during the funeral, and we all know who wants to share it too. Looking at you, Barbara. Not to mention the lack of boss fights. I'd even go as far to say that Ultra Heaven feels like a real master mode. These last two sets of levels really are the best this game has to offer. Outside of the main game, there's Time Attack mode. Here you select a course and need to reach the end as quickly as possible. Self-explanatory stuff. Unlike in the story mode, lives do in fact matter here as there are no continues, giving bananas value again outside of your score. For the two longer courses, reaching the end can be a real challenge. Ultra Heaven alone will eat up a good chunk of the lives you build up during your run. Losing my 30 plus lives all on 10.5's RNG physics bullshit resulted in sheer misery. It's far more doable now, but you still have little to no control on that stage. It should have been reworked. Yes, I'm still going on about 10.5, shoot me. Despite your best attempts, a spot on the leaderboard is never guaranteed since only the top 100 players are shown, meaning that unless you're a god at this game, you're not getting on any of those. That ship has long since sailed. Otherwise, you get a PlayStation trophy or Xbox achievement. Practically a participation ribbon, so unless you're a trophy hunter, you're best off not bothering. Also, for some godforsaken reason, Time Attack mode skips over the bonus stages and keeps the boss fights. Why? Bananas don't respawn after being collected, most likely to prevent farming, but the extra lives could seriously help with completing a bloody run. Is it because you can jump off bonus stages and skip them to save time? Is that it? Well, that's stupid. And as I said, the boss encounters miss the point of this series entirely, on top of being incredibly boring time sinks. If you fail an attempt on one or miss a cue to hit them, you may as well restart your run from square one, and try again if you have any hopes of hitting that top 100. Lastly, the minigames make a return, with the roster cut down from 50 mostly bad minigames to 10. This means that they cut out the ones solely reliant on motion controls and focused on improving the gameplay quality of those remaining.
And I just did what's referred to in the industry as lying.
These ones have been tweaked, don't get me wrong. Now they're marginally less intolerable. Let's go through each one in rapid-fire succession, shall we? Seesaw Ball requires you to move these paddles to guide the monkey to the center of the target below. Finicky, but it is passable. Space Monkey Attack is a top-down shooter, a rather boring one at that. The lack of a crosshair to show you where you're aiming makes Slingshot borderline unplayable. Dangerous Route is about as good as it was on the Wii, making it one of the few decent returning party games. Hurdle Race is a mindless button masher that's murder on your index fingers. I didn't enjoy Hammer Throw that much, but I'll admit and say that I just suck at it. I couldn't get the hang of Hovercraft Race. There is potential, though the controls for steering made this one too janky to be fun. Monkey Snowboard is infuriating because of how needlessly heavy it feels to steer the board. Monkey Target is a series staple, with this iteration feeling semi-playable if a bit stiff to control. Whack-a-mole? This has no business being in a Monkey Ball game, what the fuck? Improvements were made, yes, but that can only take you so far if the gameplay is still as mundane as your daily commute. You can also select the decathlon, where you can play all 10 party games in a row. Now, why would you subject yourself to that? Are some people playing this game genuinely that masochistic?
And that was Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD. This really does feel like a budget remaster in every single way.
Overall, it is a very polished-looking game and maintains the core of its source material very well, bringing it to a new audience and set of consoles with a more favourable control scheme. Unfortunately, this change in controls created a severe imbalance when it came to difficulty, effectively snapping it like a twig. Group this with a stripped-back, less memorable, partially original soundtrack, bosses that still do not belong, and frankly dull party games, it's no wonder people were concerned for the future of II and his friends. This game hardly did anything to improve on its source material.
You could say I'm being a bit too harsh, as this is technically a remaster and not a remake, so of course a lot of the game's flaws are still going to be left intact. It looks great, it plays wonderfully, but it's still Banana Blitz, just now on modern platforms. If you're looking for a quick pick-up-and-play experience, this game will do more than enough for you, I am sure. I, on the other hand, can't see myself revisiting it anytime soon, especially since we've seen the series continue with a remake of the original games in Banana Mania and even a brand new original entry with Banana Rumble. So it's safe to say that Banana Blitz HD could be considered Sega's most successful failure. I'm just hoping they've learned their lesson, because right now the momentum they've got going with this series is pretty good, and I'd love to see what they do with it in the future. That's all for now, so thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one.